Hello, and welcome to York College for our discussion on HIV and AIDS yesterday, today, and tomorrow. My name is John Scrincy. I am the Director of Sports Information at York College, and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. Joining me today is Dr. David Ajuluchukwu. Dr. Ajuluchukwu is the chairperson of the Health and Physical Education Department at York. He has been an HIV and AIDS specialist since the 1980s and has worked with the elderly, parolees, African Americans, and drug users who have suffered from HIV and AIDS. Also joining me is Jonathan Bell. Bell is an Army veteran and senior community health education major at York College. Next, we have Trudy Rowe. Trudy is a junior gerontology major at York College and an international student from Barbados. Next is Eric Holloman. Eric is an employee of York College in the Health and Physical Education Department. He has a degree in physical education and is also working towards a degree in gerontology. In the top row is Jesse Desir. Jesse is a graduate of York and is currently employed as the administrative assistant in the Health and Physical Education Department. Also joining us is Olufemi Shonubi. Olufemi is a junior movement science major and a health and fitness professional. And finally, we have Cindy Ramsamy. Cindy earned her bachelor's in communications technology at York College. She is now employed at York and is studying for her master's degree in urban affairs at Queens College. Now for our first question. Dr. Ajuluchukwu, can you briefly describe HIV and AIDS of yesterday?
The HIV/AIDS of yesterday, as you all know, was that I think in the 1980s we know that a virus invaded the whole world, and we know people were dying. It took us a while to actually come to an agreement what the name should be, and we came to call it HIV. We know it was a virus, but because of the group of individuals that were actually sent in the hospital then, everybody came to the conclusion that it was something to do with gay men. And because most of the people that were seen at that time were white gay males, people thought that this virus actually was just a white gay man's disease. And that created a lot of issue because the rest of the population then took a back seat and thought nothing's going to happen to us because this is just for the white gay males. Now, looking at what we know now, we should have, at least at that beginning of the epidemic, inform everybody to protect themselves. So now we're paying for that mistake. So HIV of yesterday is not what it is today. So we really want to talk about what is HIV of today and what is HIV of tomorrow so that everybody needs to protect themselves.
Faces of HIV and AIDS today.
Well, one of the first groups faces of HIV/AIDS today is those in the U.S. military, as many of us is fully aware that members in the military are not only stationed throughout the United States, but they're also stationed at various military bases all around the world, including South Korea, Japan, as well as Africa and the Middle East, in addition to places where we have also involved in some of the countries in the Caribbean.
Another face of HIV is the elderly. And for a very long time, we in society have this myth that the elderly do not engage within sexual activity. However, it is what it is, a myth. And more each day, the rates of elderly being infected with HIV is increasing.
HIV, another face of it, has visited the family, and it does not discriminate which family it has visited, and they're having problems with the challenges they face, such as money, medication, such as isolation, such as education. They really are lacking those resources.
Also, another face would be mothers, especially expecting mothers. Not knowing your status can really affect not only you, but your unborn child. So it's really important for the mother to know her status, where that way the sooner she knows, she can get the proper medication for her, not only for her, but for her unborn child.
Another face of HIV and AIDS today is the young black male.
Another phase for HIV/AIDS of today, according to the World Health Organization, Guyana was rated as one of the countries that have come in the highest for having HIV/AIDS. Now, I was born and raised in Guyana, South America, and as a young woman growing up in an underdeveloped country, the first time that I heard about HIV or was even addressed about it was when I received my visa to come to the United States of America. And the Department of Homeland Security at that time required that everyone who was entering the United States has to have an HIV test or you will not be allowed into, they have their rules whether or not they will let you here and restrict you on what you can do. That was the first time at age 23 that I was addressed on the issue of HIV. And when I did the HIV test, it wasn't even explained to me. So women in underdeveloped countries are also the faces of HIV today.
Okay. What you guys have just told us is that the faces of HIV now represent the soldier, the elderly, the family. Family could be not just one generation. Sometimes it will transcend into second and third generations. The pregnant woman and the unborn child, the male and the female. Those are the faces of HIV today.
How does this epidemic impact African Americans?
Well, the impact of this epidemic affects African Americans not only just in education, but also in financial situations where those who are struggling to make ends meet also have to make a tough decision between seeking health for this or paying their rent.
It also affects African Americans in that when we look at the prison population, African American males make up a high percentage of the inmates. And some prisons, condoms are forbidden. And then we have to look at it as these African American males, when they are released back into mainstream society, they bring with them HIV. And then it affects the African American female or females for that matter. But one other aspect is it affects African Americans within the penitentiary system.
I noticed that it affects African Americans in a way whereas, the family is just embarrassing to a lot of the African Americans' families. So they won't disclose. If you was to present them with a survey, it's hard for them to be truthful about it because they don't want the stigma that follows it, But for what we're trying to say here is that they need to do the survey and be able to help other people become informed about, it's not only our culture.
Also, it's also impacting our teenagers and our kids. Nowadays, the teenagers and kids in general are raising themselves. Our parents are left to, work 2 jobs now because of the economy. So nowadays, children are left to fend for themselves. When you fend for yourself, you have nothing else to do. Children are in each other's ears and saying it's okay to engage in sexual activity and not knowing that you need to protect yourself. Now they're doing it, and now more and more of our kids are being affected.
HIV and AIDS affects African Americans in the cause of death. From the age of 25 to 34 is the leading cause of death for African Americans. Also, 46% of AIDS patients are African Americans.
HIV/AIDS affects African Americans very heavily. The reason for this being that African Americans, there's a set of factors here that puts them at risk for HIV. One of these factors is poverty. If a home is poor, the children are unable to go to school. If they can't finish school, they can't be gainfully employed with a decent job. They don't have decent jobs. Women may turn to prostitution. The boys may turn to selling drugs. Selling drugs may eventually lead to using drugs. There's sexual behavior within the African American community where individuals have more than one partner. And then there's just an attitude that it's not going to affect us. And that attitude also puts us at risk for being infected with the virus.
So what we're saying is that the impact of HIV and AIDS on African Americans are due to a lot of issues. The issue of substance abuse. A lot of young black males, because they've not been able to graduate from high school and get into college, the jobs are not there, so it's easier for them to make monies in the street. How do you make monies? It's easier for you to sell drugs. And when you sell drugs, like you said, there could be one time you want to sell, from selling, you're going to using. And you know that when you are using drugs, you are vulnerable to any kind of behavior. The other issue is the issue of women. We tend, as African Americans, to look at our society today and see what our society or our culture is actually promoting. The issue of rap music, the issue of, oh, it's okay for one man to have more than three sexual partners. This person, there's a slang that goes with it. You hear, this one is my man, this one is my baby daddy, and this one is my jump off. You hear things like that. So when we continue to promote that kind of behavior, what we are saying is that we are not listening to the warnings of how one can contract HIV and AIDS. So we need to begin to talk to our people and say, you have to commit yourself to one sexual partner. You can't just be jumping from one bed to another. There's also the economic issue that you talked about. Some women will sell their bodies to have money. Then the issue of parolees, individuals that are released from the prison that come back into the society, some of them not knowing their status. And some of them, when they come home, what they want to do is, I want to have babies, I want to have family, I want to do stuff like that. So we need to look at how it impacts on us. Then as African Americans, one of the things that we don't talk, and studies continue to show that a lot of African American men could be bisexual, but they are married because they don't want to deal with this stigma of bisexuality. So all those things are things that we need to address. You got to be faithful, you got to be open to your sexual partner so that they know what they are getting. Until we begin to address those issues, HIV and AIDS will continue to impact African Americans.
Thanks, everyone. Your college, as an academic institution, faces a lot of challenges regarding HIV and AIDS. How do we address them?
Well, at your college, addressing the issues involving with the HIV/AIDS virus is not only educating those who do not have an understanding, but also providing the information about AIDS in English and other languages that are not spoken, since English is a second language, because most of the students that you see also come here are from international students.
Another thing that York College that we have that's unique is that we have a wide international body, and this diversity presents us with an opportunity to get HIV/AIDS, the message of HIV/AIDS and prevention of HIV/AIDS within different cultures. And what we need to do is to hone in on the international cultures, the different variations within culture, and find a way to get the message and address HIV/AIDS within the culture of these international students.
Your college faces the challenge of HIV in reference to, our president of our college, having an open door policy, and also being a member of the Health and Physical Education Department. I think that we can use our department as a vehicle, and we could, athletic teams, we could raise money and we could raise awareness by putting on basketball events and things of that nature, or a walk drive or things of that nature, just to facilitate more, knowledge of it and awareness of it.
Not only that we are diverse in this school, but we also have a lot of students who are parents. We need to teach them how to talk to their children. Also need to be role models to their kids. Nowadays, kids are looking up to the rappers, looking up to the athletes, and seeing how they act and saying it's okay to be like that. It's okay to be somebody's baby father. It's not okay. Our parents need to step in and become their role model and let them know HIV is here to stay, and if you continue on with these risky behaviors, you will not be here tomorrow.
Your college needs to address HIV and AIDS in reference to its diverse cultures. When you think of your college, you think of diversity. And in order to translate education to all these different types of people, we as the professionals need to be conscious of that, so that we're given different medians of ways that we can translate this education to all its different peoples with different values.
Your college as an institution, what I see they can do with addressing the HIV issue is publicize whatever little we have going for us right now. One of those is the Health Promotion Center, which is located in the Health and Physical Education building. Up in the Health Promotion Center, what we have is we give out free condoms. We have lots of condoms. We have lots of information pertaining to AIDS with the LGBT community. The college community members and the outside community members are welcome to come in, get information, educate themselves about HIV/AIDS. Also, what we have within the vicinity of the college is the AIDS Center for Queens County, where we have on-site HIV testing. You can just walk in, it's very confidential, get your HIV testing done. What York can also do is network with entities such as the ACQC to come to the college and have this done probably once a month, once every few months, and get the word out there, publicize, network. They can approach it from that.
Okay, and you guys are all saying the right, or giving us the right ideas as to what we need to do. When you have people come from culture where in their culture it's almost like a taboo to talk about sexuality, how now can you begin to talk to these individuals and say, we want to talk to you about HIV and AIDS? So you're right, we need to break that barrier, whether it's a cultural barrier or religious barrier. So working with the diverse population, you got to try as much as possible to have them to trust you. And if they trust you, then they are willing to discuss other issues with you. One of the good things that happened this year was that the President Obama was able to lift the ban that has been here for 22 years, saying that if you are HIV positive, you are not allowed to come into the United States. So a lot of our students, even if they know their status, are not going to discuss it because they are afraid that they might be deported. So changing that ban has made a whole lot of difference. So we will look at our students. We will begin to look at how do we put prevention strategies to meet their culture and meet their needs here at your college.
What do you see for the future in combating this deadly epidemic?
Well, what I see in the future for soldiers and veterans in combating HIV/AIDS is not only seeking social support, but also don't forget that you have the Veterans Affairs that can help you and other veterans assistance programs in addition to those also on college campuses or certain employers.
Another factor is that technology has increased, and as compared to the past back in 1980s, we have had an increase in medications that do work, and people are living longer. So going forward, we're going to see a wide influx of people moving into the age category of 65 and over who have this disease, and they will continue to live longer. So we're going to see them moving on to 70s and 80s, and we have to be ready as a society to deal with that and to conquer HIV within the age category of the elderly.
And I see family as combating is basically education. Education, like giving them care packages, be it DVDs discussing HIV and how to help their family members cope with this, with the living with this condition, and also, just being able to have treatment programs set up for them. A sort of like a directional guide, where they can, if they're at step one, they can go through the steps necessary to be able to become comfortable and embrace their relatives with love and then move forward.
I believe mothers need to take a responsibility, not only mothers, but expectant mothers. They need to make sure they know their status way ahead of time, so that if they are infected with the HIV virus, they need to do the proper steps to get the medication, not only for themselves, for their child, to combat the disease. Also, mothers who have their teenagers and children, they need to practice what they preach. You can't tell your children to do one thing and you are risking in sexual behaviors that are risky for you. You need to be a role model to your children, be there for your children, and stop having these rappers and these athletes sit there and tell your children one topic. You need to step ahead and do your job.
I agree. From a young black male's perspective, we must have self-knowledge and self-worth. So we have to take all of our value off of our sexual organs and put them on our brain and what we know, what we can do, where we are from. Because as long as your value is placed upon how many women you have slept with, this is going to lead to risky behavior, and risky behavior leads to HIV and AIDS. So to combat HIV and AIDS, we need to have self-worth and self-value.
I see hope. I see hope in the future for HIV and AIDS. But for this hope to work, there has to be a major shift or change in attitudes and behavior. Also, there is treatment that's available. On October 30th of 2009, President Obama signed the Ryan White Care. What the Ryan White Care does, it helps individuals pick up the gap in medical treatment, like low-income families, poor families, people who can't afford medical care for HIV/AIDS. The Ryan White Care or Act covers that gap and helps you with paying for treatment. So there is hope, but there has to be a tremendous shift in attitudes.
I think I agree with all of you. What we have to do in trying to combat this deadly epidemic is a change in attitude. We have the knowledge, we have the information, but people need to change their attitude. We can't continue to do drugs. Drugs will pull you down. We can't continue to jump from one person's bed to another person's bed. We have to commit ourselves to relationships. We also have to practice safer sex. We have to continue to move ourselves forward. We have to think about how do we improve ourselves other than selling our bodies. And then we also have to focus on our youth. The more young black males that we keep out of prison, the better chance of our fighting HIV among African American communities. The ones that are coming out, we also have to be willing to take them back. When we take them back, what do? We begin to teach them how to better themselves. How do you get a job? What do you do? Go back to school. Schools like your college are open. You know, we begin to reintroduce them into the educational system and then make better things out of them. And that's what we have to do.
Does anyone have any closing remarks?
For me, ignorance is no excuse. Acting irresponsibly can lead to many people being infected with HIV. You know, we have to be very responsible. You know, too many partners will only lead to everybody blaming each other for why this thing has gotten out of control. HIV will reduce our population, you know, and a lot of us will be crying and weeping over our loved ones that we have lost. So act responsibly.
The faces of HIV and AIDS are younger and older than before, and it reflects a greater diversity in age. This is because it does not discriminate against age, race, gender, or color. And as individuals, at the end of the day, we all need to accept responsibility in terms of the role that we're going to play with reducing the spread or minimizing the spread of this disease.
So what we're trying to say is that if we leave drugs alone, keep our sexual partners to one person, that we might tend to have control over HIV and AIDS. What I'm asking everybody to do is that we need to listen to one another, take responsibility, begin to act like mature individuals. Take the information that you've gotten about HIV and AIDS and make use of the information. And I'm going to finally say, if you choose to have sex with somebody and not protect yourself, just remember, you are not only having sex with the individual that you're laying down with, you are having sex with every other person that has had sex with that individual. So be safe and protect yourself. Use your condoms.
Thank you for joining us for our discussion today on HIV and AIDS. For more information on AIDS and AIDS prevention, visit the Health Promotion Center at York College, located in the Health and Physical Education Building, or call 718-262-5205.